3 or 4 weeks ago, I made the great decision to sell my iPhone X and daily the Xiaomi Pocophone F1 that GearBest sent me. In the video I made, I told you I'd update you on the transition and see if it was really worth it. Hey guys, my name is Ryan Thomas from Fail Tech. This is the Pocophone F1 and what I miss about my iPhone X. I've been enjoying the Pocophone recently, and as you've seen from the review, I liked it, I gave it a positive review, and the device as a whole is a very good value for a brand new package. But weirdly enough, it's the small omissions that add up to make the difference for me, and not the ones that you might expect. So the Pocophone is known for its speed, its fluidity, and obviously its high specs. And the iPhone is known for its speed, fluidity, and maybe not so high of a spec. But when you compare the two, the real difference comes down to the user interface. And I find that the gestures, whilst probably not quicker, they feel quicker because it's smoother, if that makes sense. So when you press a button, it's very harsh. When you use gestures, it's very smooth. It's a psychological thing, but that is something I kind of miss. And yes, I could use gestures on my Pocophone, but honestly, they're nowhere near as good on Android as they are on iOS. And something I was saying in my review is that I was playing more games on the Pocophone because on most Android phones, they tend to lag. On the Pocophone, pretty much no game lags, and it's great. And I've been playing a lot of games, such as the golf game that I mentioned in my review. Some people asked what that game was. I really like it. I think it's a good game, but it doesn't require any high spec kind of system. And I feel like I could play that on a low-end phone and it would work just fine. I haven't been tempted to play really high-end games because honestly, I find mobile gaming to be very, very boring. But at the same time, you have that option. And I don't think I missed that from my iPhone because my iPhone was just capable enough. But on Android, this is the first phone that I've personally used for a long extended period of time where I've been able to say, right, I can play pretty much whatever game I want, and that's kind of liberating. Xiaomi's MIUI skin atop of Android 9.0 is something that you get used to, and I've certainly got used to it. I actually really like, as I said in a review, the way that the kind of aesthetic is in the notification bar. I think it's clean. I actually think it's cleaner than iOS, so that is something I don't miss. But what I do miss is kind of the sense, it's psychological again. It is the confidence that I'm going to get updates. Xiaomi isn't necessarily known for their really, really fast updates. They're known for better than, let's say, Lenovo's Motorola, but not the fastest in the book. And I feel like it's something that even though I wasn't constantly updating my phone on iOS, I felt like I knew it was going to work for the next 2 years, and that was kind of really low down on the list of priorities for me. And the second thing is you can have many issues with so many different operating systems, whether you don't like the way it looks, whether you think there's not enough customization, but when the notifications for most apps is turned off by default, that is something that really needs to be addressed. And I still haven't found out how to do it, but at the same time, it's something I don't really care to do, and I feel like it's just a stupid thing that they implemented into the skin. On the Pocophone, by default, you don't get notifications readily, which is kind of terrible. As much as I know there are phones out there that beat the iPhone in terms of cellular connectivity quality, it absolutely wipes the floor with the Pocophone because I was getting drops, I've been getting hangs, I've been getting to the point where it says I've got 4G, but I've clearly not got a connection. I have to reboot the phone like 3 or 4 times to get it working. If you live in the UK, you're going to have to be very specific about which phone you get. I've got the global one, and I've had quite a few problems. I'm on 3UK and O2. That is something I really do miss about my iPhone. However, I don't miss the fact that it only had one SIM tray. I love having dual SIMs. That's one of my favourite things about Chinese smartphones is most of them come with dual SIM slots. That is something I really love because I do have dual SIMs. I have 2 SIMs, and it is really helpful to have them in one phone. I don't have to carry 2 devices around. Not that I could right now because this is the only phone I have that actually works. You might think this is a bit weird, but I actually prefer the cameras on the Pocophone compared to the iPhone X. Now this is something that I'm sure a lot of you will hate on me for, but I actually really like the way they look, especially the front-facing camera, the selfie camera, because most photos I take on the rear camera are not of people and therefore skin tones don't really matter, and I found really horrible skin tones on the iPhone X. But the front-facing camera, which is, primarily used for selfies, is better, like objectively, subjectively, just way better than the iPhone X. It's a higher resolution, it's not quite got the same portrait mode, but honestly I don't care about portrait mode. It's got much better colours and more importantly skin tones aren't completely washed out like they seem to be on the iPhone X where it looks like someone's trying to mess around with HDR. and it actually works, which is something I like. The rear camera isn't very stable, but I don't shoot a lot of video on my phone. Again, this is a very personal thing. Some of you, a lot of you will take a lot of video on your phone, so it will matter to you. But I like the way that it's kind of all in a... I think the secondary camera is a bit of a waste of time, to be honest, but it's there on the spec sheet. I think the actual image quality coming out of this is much better than I expected. And maybe not quite as good as the iPhones, but I'm taking pictures of other things and I feel like the colours are terrible on iPhone, not necessarily the hardware. But in all honesty, I'd give that all up in a heartbeat for the form factor of the iPhone 10. Now, this is a good form factor, don't get me wrong. It's fairly ergonomic, like it's rounded, it's grippy. I like the way it feels, to be honest. And the fact that you don't need a case and it's still like, it's built like a brick. It's actually fantastic. It's great. It hasn't got any scratches and I haven't put a case on it since day one. So I feel like it's a good build, but the fact that you got that big screen in a tiny form factor, it fit my hand perfectly. Like the iPhone 10's small body, like the way it just fits all together, that's the best one in my opinion. And I think like not a lot of people are going to get that because I'm tiny and most people have bigger hands than me, but it's just a really nice way of laying it all out. Whereas this, of course, you've got the big chin, you've kind of got the large bezels. I don't really care about the way it looks, but the way it feels and the use of it. Like, am I using this for two hands or one hand? The iPhone, most times I could use one hand, most applications, but this, it's pretty much always a two-handed job for me. As I said, I'm really glad that this thing is built the way it is and it's not using glass and all those kind of fancy materials because I don't really care about if I drop it, not that I have. And I feel like that's probably the biggest selling point apart from the battery, which is something I do not miss about my iPhone 10. I got good battery life out of my iPhone 10. Trust me, it was good. It would get me through a full day, pretty much no worries whatsoever. But this can get me through 2 days on a lot of days. Like, it is great. The battery life on this is one of the best, if not the best, that I've checked out in a phone personally. Now, I haven't checked out loads of phones. Of course, there's the Mate 20 Pro. There are lots of Huawei phones, lots of Samsung Notes and all that kind of stuff. I haven't really checked out a lot of those, but for most of the phones that I've checked out on this channel, in fact, all of them, I think this has the best battery life. And the fast charging is good. Okay, it doesn't have wireless charging, but I never really used wireless charging anyway. Yeah, this is basically as good as it gets for me in terms of battery life. The screen, the display, the panel, whatever you want to call it, it's just not that good on the Pocophone. It's a true worry for me because it's something that I was kind of looking forward to using IPS again. I do like IPS displays, I think the colours are great. But when you compare it to just the fantastic, the stunning, the brilliant, the vibrant OLED display of the iPhone 10, of course this is going to fail. I mean, it's like a third of the price, like maybe a quarter of the price in some markets. What was I expecting? But the fact that there's a lot of screen bleeding and the pixel grey to grey response times aren't good when scrolling, and it's just not quite good enough for me. Like when I go and pick up my dad's Galaxy S4 and that Galaxy S4 has a much better screen than this, you kind of think, wow, what's the point? I paid £80 for that S4, and not that I paid, Gearbest paid £250 for this. Kind of makes a bit more sense to go with the Samsung. Of course, it is something you give up when you're paying such a low price for a phone, but it's something that I would rather have given up on specs than the display. And talking of specs, I've got a video coming out very soon on why specs don't matter. I'm sure there are tons of 8-year-olds, 12-year-olds, maybe some 10-year-olds sprinkled in there in the comments on their keyboards, absolutely spamming, right, no, you're stupid, specs are the best, you know, every phone should have 10 gigs of RAM and every phone should have 16 cores at like 12 gigahertz. No, like there are so few people that actually truly will benefit from a high-spec phone that it makes absolutely no sense to go and put everything into a phone and skimp on everything else and call it a good phone. The Pocophone, okay, is a good phone, but there are much better options. I would handily take a Mi A2 Lite or a Mi A2 over this, or an iPhone 7, or even an iPhone 6S for that matter, because everything else just works better. This is like, imagine a really high-powered engine, like a Ferrari engine in a Nissan Micra. That's basically how this thing is balanced. Like, it's kind of built, I like the way it's built, but it's not built fantastically. It's using kind of cheaper materials, it's got a very cheap display, it's using some fairly cheap cameras with some good software, mind you, and it's all bundled on top of a really high-spec Snapdragon 845 and either 6 or 8 gigabytes of RAM. I would give all of those specs up for Android One, which, okay, might not be the latest and greatest, but it is going to get good updates. And I would probably get rid of the second camera and possibly even get rid of the face detection thing for just a better IPS display. Doesn't have to be any high resolution, doesn't have to be brighter, does not have to be any different kind of technology, literally just a better binned, a better quality display that doesn't have that horrible shadowing, horrible screen like backlight bleeding, and much better grey-to-grey response times would be nice. I'll be honest, I'm glad I sold my iPhone and I'm glad I picked up the Pocophone because it's kind of opened my eyes into what is out there, and I haven't really checked out a lot of modern phones recently, so it is nice to check these out. I personally, again, my favourite feature is the battery life, but I feel like the next phone I check out, I need to try something with a different skin. I need to try Samsung, or I need to try an LG or a Sony. For me, this thing doesn't compete with like a Galaxy S8 used, Galaxy S7 Edge used, anything like that. And you can go on and say that those old phones have terrible system on chips and terrible RAM configurations, but honestly, I don't give a monkeys because specs don't matter to me. Thank you all so much for watching this video. Please do like, dislike, comment and subscribe if you're around here to never miss a video like this one. I'm sure I'll get plenty of dislikes. I want to give a massive shout out to GearBest for sending me out the Pocophone, and I want to give a massive shout out to my Discord members and Patreon members as well. I'll leave all links to social media and Discord in the video description. Thank you all so much for watching. My name's been Ryan Thomas, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.